66.1. So the fancy lamp is still in the shop, but we are losing too many weeks of work, so Lance rigged another light and is going to try to work with inferior illumination. The way, you know, our talks we're kind of inferiorly illuminated in what we say.
Although I have to tell you, before you showed up tonight, I was listening to Sam Harris debate with Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
which is supposed to be the debate of the century, and it was really childish. I thought Jordan Peterson was fine, but Sam Harris was just throwing these really ill-informed arguments against religion that are kind of like college level. He criticizes things he doesn't know much about.
Oh.
So I actually, it's funny because you know how they say that when you meet a famous movie star, they turn out to be ordinary people just like yourself, and then you realize this person is not an idol. Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of how I feel about Sam Harris. I mean, if he wants to come here and argue with his first-year philosophy student level disagreements about religion, I'll take him on. It was embarrassing.
Is it possible the clamp to turn it the other way?
What clamp? This clamp?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
I got to say that the debate of the century will occur in 2089 between a resurrected Abraham Lincoln and a bio-circuitry augmented
Thank you.
Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, we have 82 more years left in the century.
If you could augment your penis, would you, Rick?
No, because for the Man Show, we did an in-depth look at penis augmentation.
By the way, we've had this discussion 6 or 7 times.
But anyway,
but it's okay. It's worth repeating.
I think
it's important.
Well, I've been married since 1991. Nobody is interested in my penis. Though, if you'd like to see it, there's a movie directed by Chris Kasich, starring Brian Posehn and Paget Brewster, where you can actually see my junk rattling around for a good 15 seconds. But I mean, the only way that I think actually works is one of those vacuum pumps, and I'm not even sure about that. But there are some creepy ways of doing it.
How do the vacuum pumps work?
It's like sticking your thing in a vacuum cleaner, except without having to call 911 when it gets stuck in the vacuum cleaner. And the vacuum kind of, like when you're building big muscles, you're actually injuring the muscles kind of at a microscopic level, and then they kind of rebuild larger.
Okay.
It's kind of that way with your thing in a vacuum chamber. The chambers that fill with blood kind of, I think, get slightly ruptured and then heal slightly bigger. And I guess if you do it every day for months on end, I assume that you'd see some growth.
All right.
But if you're sitting around doing that, you got to know that you're a sad case.
All right.
Do you think that people are actually working on some sort of penis growth? I mean, you think somebody could get very wealthy off of that, right?
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but a lot of the stuff that, like Viagra and all the boner juice pills, were discovered more or less by accident. Where, Viagra, I think, is a vasodilator, which is something that opens your veins up. So and your penis is in some ways just a giant vein, and I think they were looking for some kind of blood pressure or circulation medicine that they found out gave people like vicious boners. It wasn't research into boners.
By the way, that's how Spanish Fly works.
Okay. I don't even know what.
Do you all know what Spanish Fly is?
I know what it's supposed to be, but I don't know what it actually is. And
Well, chemically, I don't know what it is either. I don't know if it's the gland of the monkey or whatever it is, but all it does, all right, Spanish fly is something we used a lot in the 1970s, and it's supposed to be you're supposed to put it in the lady's drink when you're on a date.
Well, this was legend. Nobody ever actually had Spanish.
Well, no, they did actually. Roman Polanski, that's part of the charges against him that he was had to leave the country over. He put it in the drink of a 13-year-old girl. Anyway, the point is, all it does is it's supposed to I was really curious, like, what the hell would make a woman sexually aroused? Because God knows I've never been able to do such a thing on my own. And it turns out that all that Spanish fly does is it forces blood to the vaginal area.
Viagra will do that for a woman as well as for a guy.
Okay, so apparently all you need down there is blood flow. So it's all about circulation.
I liked hearing the stories like 15 years ago about the factories where they made Viagra, where the dust would get in the air and everybody was walking around. But, all right, this is a good intro to talking about Asia Argento, who's a Me Too activist who has been accused of...
Well, wait, you have to acquaint people with who she is.
She's an actress.
Well, she's famous for getting up at, I think it was Cannes, and while receiving an award, as she took the award, she said, in front of all of Hollywood and European filmmakers, she said, "Harvey Weinstein raped me, Harvey Weinstein raped me, Harvey Weinstein raped me." Mm-hmm. And with that, she became propelled into the public consciousness, and it sort of began part of the Me Too movement.
And she's been accused of paying about $400,000 to a boy who was now a man, I guess, who was 17 when she had sex with him. And apparently they'd been friends since he was 7. And at some point, one or both of them thought it might be a good idea for them to have sex. And maybe one of them did. Anyway, the boy got bummed out after that, he says, and he was losing work because he was bummed out. And she was paying him to compensate him for lost money because he was too bummed to get good acting jobs. So I don't always trust my opinions about stuff because I'm an old guy and old guys often have stupid opinions. So I went on Twitter, as I will do, to take the temperature of the issue, and I was surprised to see that there were no people saying, well, when I was 17, if there'd been a sexy actress lady, then woo-woo. Everybody was, the most common comment among people who weren't complete idiots is just because she was raped by Harvey Weinstein doesn't mean that she can't also be a rapist. Or some of the comments were the other way around. Just because she raped the kid doesn't mean that she wasn't raped by Harvey Weinstein. So it's been what I consider a fairly quick turnaround from the era in which guys would, when a hot blonde teacher in her mid-20s or early 30s would get caught having sex with a high school football player, and then what you'd hear in the office would be, well, the high school football player is an idiot for getting caught, and that, if I were that's gone now. It's people are considered rapists regardless of what gender they are. Which is weird. I mean, remember that movie back in the early 80s called Class, starring Andrew McCarthy?
No, Rick.
It's about a kid who's in high school, he's a fancy rich kid who, I don't know, has sex with somebody's mom, I think, or a tutor who's well over age. There was even a movie called My Tutor where the same thing happened. There was also a movie called Summer of 42. I mean, history is lousy with movies where an underage guy is
American Pie, has seen those?
yeah, with what's his name? I want to say Spengler, but what? Yeah,
Drew Diggler?
no, that's Boogie Nights. But yeah, there's a long. Or you could probably find a dozen movies where an underage dude is initiated by a woman of the world, and that's gone now. That's it. Rape is rape.
Are you pausing for me to
Well, I don't know. I
respond?
guess that's fine because I'm more than 40 years past the point where I could be that teenage boy, like longing for, like, anyway. I mean, it's fine. Rape is rape. Lance?
Well, I think it's worthwhile telling our billions of listeners what went into this conversation. We first did this conversation a week ago, and what happened was I became strident and nearly hysterical. And we talked it over and said, Lance, you're going to freak everybody out. I mean, if this goes out on YouTube, not only will it be banned, but you'll be probably imprisoned, and in prison you'll probably suffer by whatever tortures the guards can
Vigilante
think of.
action.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the other prisoners will object to being in the same cells with you, and they'll probably finish you off. And I waited to feel my reaction, and I guess it's turning out that I'm the emotional one in this show. But I feel the same way. I'm going to try and think if there's anything I'm going to say that would, but that was good. I'll be in prison and the other prisoners will take care of me. All right. I think.
Like Dahmer. Yeah, somebody will bash in your brains in the shower.
Because I'm so reprehensible. I think that the kid that went public with having had sex with a movie actress when he was 17 should be slapped. I'm sorry. This kid doesn't need a payoff. He needs to be slapped. I don't think that there's anything wrong with an older woman having sex with a 17-year-old boy.
Well, what about,
In fact, I don't. Not only do I not think there should be a law against it, I think there should be a law making it mandatory.
All right, let's watch out a little bit. But I think it would depend on the 17-year-old boy at the very least. I mean, I was horny by the age of 9.5 because I was a geek, which meant I was a nerd. I stayed in at recess and I read. And anything. Not just books for teens or books for preteens or fucking easy reader books. I read adult books and adult magazines like discussed sex, and they had topless women. The early issues of GQ.
I hate it when you talk about your puberty.
Yeah, but like, to wrap it up quickly, I mean, I had a sex desert between the time that I wanted to have sex at 9.5, which is way too early. If I hadn't been a geek, I would have had sports to distract me until I was 12 or 13 or 14, and then I might have been cool enough to make out with a girl in 9th grade or something. But no, I was almost 20 before I lost my virginity.
He ruins every show with these stories.
Sorry, but like, I feel as if, I maybe would have been ready to have sex, or at least, second base with somebody at age 17.
Two adults that did have sex were Stormy Daniels and allegedly Donald Trump. And
Not allegedly, they had frickin' sex.
So now there's this issue about campaign finance laws being broken, according to Cohen, and he pled to a that this non-disclosure agreement goes against an influential election. Is that true? How do you?
What you're getting at is this past week was hellacious for people around Trump.
Wait a minute. Our director, in her infinite wisdom,
Was trying to move shit
trying
along.
to move shit along. I just want to get this clear. There is nothing wrong with a 17-year-old boy having sex with an older woman.
It depends on the boy.
No, it doesn't depend on the boy. It's boys at that age are fully capable of having sex. They can be in the military. They know what they're doing. There's no moral issue whatsoever.
But what about emotional fragility?
Listen,
We live in a new era where people,
are just neurotic. It's not. This is. It's perfectly healthy. It's perfectly healthy for a 17-year-old boy to have sex with an older woman.
Yeah, but what's wrong with the older woman that she needs to bang 17-year-olds?
Who cares? You know what? I thought about that because you asked that question last week when we had to cut that because it was so appalling the things I said. But maybe she just likes dick, Rick.
No, I think she liked the boy.
You know what? And I think we should encourage anything that gets women to want to have sex with men.
Yeah, except that, it's probably true for both men and women, but maybe more so for women. And maybe I've got a double standard, but sometimes women who are into sex, there are plenty of healthy, psychologically healthy, sex-positive people. But there are also sex-positive people who are fucked up.
Well, maybe she's fucked up. Who cares?
Well, it's maybe not the best thing to have sex with a person who is fucked up around sex.
It's not for us to judge. And furthermore, I'm going to say something else that will probably, when I'm sent to prison for these comments, and the prisoners raise a fuss. First they'll stage a strike. They'll send a letter to the warden saying, "Listen, we'll hang out with cannibals, but we won't hang out with Lance because he's really reprehensible." And another thing I think is that girls underage should be treated differently, and that if a man has sex with an underage girl, he is committing a crime and should be prosecuted. But I don't feel the same way about men because men are about older women and younger men because they're different. They're different. We are different. The genders are different. Young men are all about having sex. They're sex machines at that age. They're little rabbits. They're not going to suffer any emotions other than gaining in confidence. Whereas a young girl can be destroyed by an experience like that because they need an emotional connection to their lover that they're not going to get if they're being seduced.
I don't know. Boys at 17 are idiots. A lot of them. Which may be why, so many boys getting with older women get caught because they brag to everybody and they're...
As they should.
I don't know.
And the people they brag to should keep it to themselves.
I don't know.
What kind of a world are we creating here where young men are being turned into such fragile snowflakes that they can't have sex with an older woman
I'm not sure
without
I mind
crying
a
like
world
little
of
wimps?
I'm not sure I mind a world of fragile snowflakes. Look at Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods... Nobody said no to Tiger Woods from his teen years on because he was a golf star. He was on the Merv Griffin show showing off his golf skills when he was 2 years old.
That's too young.
But he grows up as this great athlete and he has, even when he's married, he has his buddies pimp for him. He's out at clubs.
What does this have to do with the other issue?
It has to do with Tiger Woods was really bad. He had no game because nobody ever said no to him. So when it all came crashing down, it turned out he was, he had no sexual maturity. he ends up, getting beaten up by his wife, who hits him in the head with some golf clubs or something, because he never learned how to, kind of like our commander-in-chief, who is used to people not saying no. And they have this
Rick, I'm sorry to try to bring a little bit of direction into this, but what does this have to do with the issue of older women and younger men and underage men, boys? What does it have to do with it? If you want to criticize men, okay, fine, but that's a different issue.
Well, having...
And by the way, look at this poor shell of a man. He has to criticize men, because that's what the Democrat Party has done to this guy.
No, I'm going to praise men, too.
Oh, good, okay.
So, when I was finally mature enough...
Wait a minute. We're not going to hear about your sex life.
No, but not really, except for one thing. But I finally started being able to have girlfriends and date women when I was almost 20. I was finally enough of not a mess for some women to find me bearable.
Why does this have to come up?
No, hold on, fucker. Come on. The people I turned to for romantic advice were jocks, because I was bouncing bars from 20 on. And I turned to the guys who had been great athletes in junior high and high school, because those guys had girlfriends. They'd been popular, and they'd had girlfriends since they were 13, 14, 15. They had 6 or 7 years more experience with girls than I did. And I'm like, hey, what's up with this? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? And those guys had sexual maturity because they had experience. So I guess what I'm saying is that I'm endorsing sexual maturity, emotional maturity, relational maturity, that there's something to be said for people growing up to a certain extent. I guess the framework would be, it'd be a nice way to grow up to be 12 and have your first girlfriend and maybe make out with her. And then at 13, first base, or 14, first base, second base, and kind of ease into it and, learn, not go straight from idiot who's never been with anybody to somebody who's banging a creepy 38-year-old.
What's creepy about it?
Well,
she likes guys.
have you researched Asia Argento? There's plenty that's creepy about Asia Argento. Kind of creepy in a sexy way, if you
Seems
want.
like a nice girl. I wish, if I had a 17-year-old son, I'd put him on a plane to meet Asia Argento in a second.
Yeah, she's...
In fact, I would be on the plane. I'd say, you know what? Sorry, this you're too young for this, and I would take his seat on the plane. She seems like a very nice person.
She's probably pretty nice, but she's also creepy.
What's creepy about her wanting to have sex with men?
Well,
What is creepy?
That's not... She's... she has this perverse kind of presence where she's starred in a bunch of really extreme horror movies. I think her dad's a big-time horror director.
Yeah, I know.
And apparently she likes doing movies that are a perverse mix of sex and horror. And
She's sounding better and better.
all right,
Am I
yeah,
supposed to-
but she might be NC-17. She might be only for mature audiences.
All right. Well, look. Let me ask you a question, Rick, because I love to always bring this back to the Democrat issue. If you, since you think it's wrong for an underage boy to have sex with an older woman,
I'm not saying that,
Why is
but-
it that you think it's okay for
Actually,
why is it that you think it's okay for a teenager to take hormones to change their gender so that they can transition from male to female or female to male? Why is that okay?
I'm not fully versed in the area, but
But we had this
but-
discussion,
but-
and we found out that transgenders are beginning the hormone treatment in their teenage years, before they're 18, before they've even finished puberty. in order to transition into being the opposite gender, and you were for that.
If it's done with, if there are proper screening, if it's done with, if it's vetted properly. But hold on, but because I think, and I shouldn't be talking for trans people, but I get the idea is that sexuality isn't necessarily linked to gender.
Well, that's just great, Rick. So let me get this straight. I just want to clarify your position. So if a 17-year-old boy has sex with an older woman, then that's you're against that. But if a 15-year-old wants to take hormones to go from being a boy to a girl, you're for it, right? That's okay.
Well, it depends on the situation. John Hughes had a quote when he made Weird Science. He said there are geeks and there are nerds. And I believe the difference that he talked about was nerds will be odd and socially awkward their entire lives. Geeks are just guys who are slow to mature. In the movie Weird Science, I think one of the geeks was Anthony Michael Hall.
This is getting crazy, Rick. I need an answer.
So
this is why Lance loses his shit. Is it ever okay for a 15-year-old to take hormones so he can turn himself from a boy to a girl?
If there's sufficient maturity and clarity.
So the answer is yes?
Sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes yes. Mr. Prosecuting Attorney.
Okay, thank you. So, I just want to, it took a half an hour. We had to talk about our sex lives, we had to talk about males, we had to talk about an Italian actress, but this is the contradiction in the liberal mindset. The left-wing mindset is full of anti-scientific, illogical, irrational conclusions. Here you have a guy that says it's wrong for a 17-year-old guy to have sex with a 30-year-old woman, which to me is really the best thing there is in life, but it's okay for a 15-year-old, under the right circumstances, to be turned into the opposite gender. Do you see? I want everyone watching this to understand, if you're voting Democrat, you are voting for the insanity that my learned opponent is proposing.
So I'd say it's okay sometimes for a 15-year-old to have hormone therapy, the way it would be okay sometimes for a 17-year-old boy to have sex with somebody over age. I mean, I don't know if we need a blanket. You can't have a blanket, 17-year-old. I mean, that's why we have statutory rape laws.
Okay, so
So not every 17-year-old boy is ready to have sex with a 37-year-old woman. But there might be, back, if you look at me back in 1977.
And I don't want to talk about your. All right, you know what? You can talk about whatever you want.
You got laid when you were 17. You did.
You know what? This has not. It's not personal. We're trying to determine policy for the United States, and this woman, Asia Argento, did the right thing. She had sex with a 17-year-old guy. And
have you seen her tattoos? Her tattoos alone would scare the shit out of some 17-year-old guys.
And she's being persecuted for it. And you're saying that under the right circumstances, there's a 15-year-old out there that could change from a man to a woman, has the maturity to do that.
Yeah, some people are more mature than others.
Really? Is there a single 15-year-old on this planet that has the maturity to determine that he should be a woman?
Yeah. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet.
Okay, so because of that, you're telling me it should be legal for 15-year-olds to change sexes.
If they're properly vetted yeah.
Should it be legal for 17-year-old boys to have sex with older women?
It's not in many places in this country.
Should it be?
No, not as a blanket policy, no.
Okay, So we have two laws for two different situations.
Yep.
Illegal for 17-year-olds to have sex with older women. Legal for 15-year-olds to change from boy to girl with actual medical surgery and hormone treatment.
No, wait, you're saying, now you're adding something else into the mix.
No, but that's how they do it. You don't just sit there and say, I'm 15, I feel like a girl.
No, people have hormone therapy at 15.
Right, but what that does is it shrinks the testicles. And it prevents breasts from growing out. So you're literally mutilating your body at 15. You think that should be legal, Rick?
Yeah.
I rest my case. Let's
Okay.
go on to another subject.
Okay. I mentioned that, that I'm 40 years past the point where I could be underage and potentially have sex with an older woman, which leads to, I want to talk about getting older, because since about 1986, I've been terrified of flying. I think 86, one of the years in the mid-80s was a really bad year for plane crashes. And since that year, I have to take extra blood pressure medication to get on a plane. I just don't like it. Because, yeah, it's safer than other forms of transportation, but when shit goes wrong, it can really go wrong at 300 and 400 miles an hour. But lately I've been flying more. My parents are pretty freaking old and I have to go see them quite a bit. And I've realized I'm not as afraid of flying as I used to be, because the plane wreck that is my own biology is getting closer and closer. At 58, I don't have that many, super good years left. So, any reaction to that, Lance? Well, let me add to give you more to respond to, which sucks because we're about to enter an age of wonders, including vastly extended lifespans. And we may not get to enjoy that because we're old fuckers. We don't feel old because you and I kind of eat pretty well, and we work out, and we don't have the oldish bodies that our dads had at 57 and 58, but it's coming for us just the same. We can fool ourselves, get an extra 5 years, 8 years, but the reaper is coming.
I'll tell you two things that bother me about old age, and that is that it limits who I can date, but having had that big argument about age and sex, but in my case, we're talking about all people well above legal. But what I'm afraid of with old age, if we're going to talk about our fears about old age, and I guess that's where we're at right now in this show, is that I will die without ever accomplishing the great works of art that I was capable of. And that's the first thing that jumps into my mind, because I've been poor my whole life, and really, really dirt poor. And when you're really, really dirt poor, you make huge sacrifices. And if I made all those sacrifices and I don't end up doing great works of art, then it would really be, it's really depressing to think about it. So, whenever I think about it, I just make sure to stay in the studio and work a couple more hours. Because what I find is the only way that I can get to be a greater artist is by putting in the hours. And a good mental health exercise that I have is this. I say to myself, okay, here's the problem. I have not accomplished enough as an artist. Can I do it all in one day? No. I'd have to sleep. I have to do my job for money. I have to eat. So I won't be able to do it all in one day. But if every chance I get, I put in another hour for my art, then that's all I can do. I'll give you an example. This week, I felt this fear that you described, that I was getting old, I hadn't accomplished enough. So I said, you know what? I could go out tonight or I could work till midnight. So I stayed in and I worked till midnight. And when I went to sleep, the fear was gone. Because I felt like, okay, if I do this a lot, then I'm doing everything humanly possible to accomplish my goals. So that is my prescription for those who are afraid of getting older. That you're not afraid of getting older irrationally. You've got a reason you're afraid. And in my case, it's a fear of lack of accomplishment. But you need to analyze why you're afraid. What are you afraid of losing?
Everything.
Well,
Existence, consciousness, memory.
Well, see, I've got that solved because I'm a believer in God. I'm a believer in older women having sex with younger men, and I'm also a believer in God. And I know that death for me will be just another beginning.
All my dad and my uncle and my grandfather, all the Rosner men tend to look more and more alike as they get older. Our hair gets crazier and thinner. Our noses get this little old guy roundness.
He's got a great nose. We've been looking at your profile.
Well, yeah, but I've had surgery.
Year.
But like,
it's a great nose.
Anyway,
right?
I can look at my dad.
You're wrong about many things, but you can feel good about the nose.
Thank you. It was a discount medical school nose job.
I didn't mean to derail you. Go back to your subject.
But I can look at my dad and I can see the reaper coming. And I'm sad for my dad, and I'm sad for myself, and for the other Rosners who've already been taken.
Yeah, I see. A religious person doesn't ever fear death.
Oh, come on. You can be religious
in the same way. Now, I'll tell you what. I knew a fella. I was at a party, and I met this guy that works in hospice. And I said to him, so, what's it like working in hospice with people that are dying? And he said, well, it's depressing. Everyone's pretty sad. I said, really? Are the atheists, who's sadder, the atheists or the religious people? And he said, well, absolutely, no question. The religious people die far less depressed than the atheists do. Right. So now the religious people may be wrong, they may be deluded, but they have less depression about death.
Which may be the way to go, because if you can't do anything about it, then you might as well be copacetic about it.
Well, you can't force yourself to believe something.
But if you try to have faith every day, the way a religious person does, you probably get better at it, the same way you get better at painting.
Well, the thing is faith comes with a lifetime of religiosity. Mm-hmm. So you're not every day, you're not waking up and saying, I must believe that everything's going to be okay.
No, but every day you look for God in things.
Yeah, that's true. And as a result, I am not concerned about being obliterated. I'm not afraid of the afterlife. I look forward to the afterlife. But I am afraid of leading a life that was less than it could have been.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that too, but I'm also kind of lazy. But I've got a segue here between, you've got a bunch of evangelical Christians who continue to support Trump in huge percentages. He's more popular than he's been in a year or more, according to many polls, even though this past week was a week of many people around him being found guilty or pleading guilty or getting immunity for testifying about stuff that's happened around him. And much of it makes Trump look, if not guilty of breaking law, at least pretty frickin' sleazy. And there are tens of millions of evangelical Christians who have decided that they're okay with Trump the president, even if they're even if they have mixed feelings about Trump the man.
Well, so far he didn't break any law.
Well, it could. We don't know.
No, we do know.
No, come on. No, I mean,
You don't know because you've been brainwashed.
we don't know.
No, you don't know. He did not break any law because if he broke a law, there'd be charges against him. He'd be indicted.
What about all the unindicted co-conspirator stuff?
There is no co-conspiracy. Co-conspiracy to what? To
Whatever.
pay off a woman that claims she had an affair with you? That's not
Yeah,
against the law.
Yeah, but there are aspects of it that may violate campaign finance.
No, there aren't. No, there aren't.
Okay, now
Because-
then you're brainwashed.
No, because look, in order for there to be campaign finance law violation, it has to be something that has to do with a campaign. The argument that he would make is, I don't want this woman ruining my marriage. I'm going to pay her off to just shut up, and that has nothing to do with the campaign.
So, okay, I mean...
So there is no finance campaign
Let me
law.
buy that argument just for the sake of moving the discussion on. Because I said, even if it doesn't mean that he's guilty of crimes, does mean that he's kind of sleazy.
Not necessarily. Every man that has the kind of money he has some woman out there shaking him down. And by the way, Stormy Daniels has done this before. That's kind of her MO.
With whom?
There was a politician down in the South. She did the same thing. She had an affair with him or claimed to have an affair with him and shook him down for money. So, I mean, this happens to a lot of important men.
Who are banging women extracurricularly.
Maybe.
Okay.
We don't even have proof of that. Do you know there's no proof that he had sex with either of those women other than their words?
Okay.
And I mean...
And except, the way not direct proof, but the way he's talked about... there's plenty of proof that he's been... he cheated on wife number 1 with wife number 2 before she was wife number 2, and the same thing with wife number 3 on wife number 2.
Okay, all right, so he's an adulterer. So that would have included pretty much every president we've ever had, except for Lincoln and Carter?
No, like half of them.
Okay.
60% maybe. I don't know.
I'm no Asia Argento, but I've got to do this.
Okay, well,
it's for the sake of our show. Okay, all right. So I don't care if he had any affairs.
Yeah, but you don't care, but you're not an evangelical Christian.
Well, evangelicals can evaluate his overall accomplishments, and I would rather have somebody having affairs that was bringing peace and prosperity to America than somebody that was faithful to his wife and a lousy president like Obama or Carter. I mean, assuming they were. We've had this argument before.
Yeah.
Human beings are capable of being evangelicals and not being complete fucking idiots. The guy he's the best president I've had in my lifetime. He crushed ISIS. He moved the temple to Jerusalem. He's
not the temple.
The embassy to Jerusalem. He's crushing Iran. The economy of Iran is near collapse. He's fighting China to keep them from stealing all of our trade and our technology. He's told NATO our allies that they have to actually build armies instead of spending all their money on their health care for their citizens.
Previous presidents have said
no,
that.
no, but he's holding their feet to the fire. The German army doesn't even exist. There's no German army at this point. And he's telling them, look, we're not going to shoulder the burden for you people so that you can spend all that money on welfare.
I have
We
to
have the best economy, arguably, we've had, certainly in my lifetime. The more blacks, women, and Hispanics are working than ever before in history. The stock market's at record high. And I'm supposed to be upset because he had an affair on his wife?
Well, there's also all the stuff you didn't mention. That, that these trade wars, which may be helpful in some ways, are also hurting a lot of Americans, or potentially hurting Americans.
Well, when they do, we can talk about it, Rick.
The tax cut that was supposed to benefit the middle class mostly goes to the rich. I know the rich pay most of it.
Every single class of American got a tax cut. That is a Democrat lie. Now, it's true that if your taxes were only $5,000, you're only going to get 1,000 back.
Well,
but every sector of society got a tax cut.
Yeah, I think Carol is taking home an extra $5 a week.
Okay. My point is this: if you insist,
Oh, no, I just said crumbs.
if you insist that the middle class is not getting a tax cut, you are guilty of the class strife that the Democrats like to pull.
Well, how much
And
of a
you
tax
bought it.
cut is the middle class getting?
The average middle class person is getting between $1,000 and $2,500 in
According
tax cuts.
to...
We can look it up.
we should do that. I'm tired. Let's take a break and look it
Real
up.
quick, are you saying Carol's getting crumbs? Are you on
Yeah,
record?
she's bringing home an extra $5 a
Well,
week.
that's what Nancy Pelosi said. I mean, our director makes a good point that for Nancy Pelosi, a middle class person getting an extra $700 at the end of the year is nothing because she's a multimillionaire. But frankly, if everybody gets a tax cut of some kind, then he's done the best he can. And you're buying Democrat.
I'm just looking at Carol's pay stubs.
50% of all.
Carol gets an extra frappuccino a week.
The upper 50% of income in the United States pay 90% of the taxes.
Of certain types of taxes. Of income tax. But there are
Yes.
other taxes.
Well, but income tax is what Trump was trying to deal with. If you want sales tax, that's a separate issue.
All right, well,
So if you're trying to tell me that we should all be feeling terrible because
what
Trump
was billed as a
made
middle
it-
class tax cut.
Yes, and it affects
most
the middle
of it-
class.
And most of it went to the upper. 85% of it goes to the upper
But
class.
that's because if you...
But you can't
if
call
you-
it a middle class tax
Rick,
cut if
Rick.
6/7 of it goes to multimillionaires.
Look, you're a math expert, okay?
Yeah.
If it's the same percentage, then it doesn't matter. if
It's not the same
millionaire-
percentage,
the
it's a higher percentage for
no,
rich people.
No, it's not. If you're a millionaire and you get 10,000 tax cut, and you're a person that makes 100,000, you get a $1,000 tax cut. It's the same thing. Trump
you
did the
can argue
best he could for you.
So anyway, we should break and
I don't
take a
want to look it up. It's too boring.
Well, I'm
You
tired.
don't believe me. We can take
Yeah,
a break. but
yeah.
let's-
Real quick.
Yes,
Is that grounds for impeachment though? The campaign situation?
No, because you can't be impeached for anything you did before you took office, Rick.
You can be impeached for anything if they have the votes. It's
No,
what you
no,
can be
no,
impeached
no,
for
but
is
no,
nebulous.
No, you have to. It has to be high crimes and misdemeanors taking place during the time you're in office.
If somebody
If
there-
you
there were-
cheat, if you cheat on your taxes before you get elected, they can't impeach you for that.
there have been movies where, like there was one with Gene Hackman. Now this happened while he was president.
God's sake, Rick, you
Gene-
can't be impeached. You cannot be removed from office according to the Constitution for something you did before you took office. And all of these infringements with Manafort and Cohen, one, had nothing to do with Trump, and two, Took place before he took office.
But if he continued to lie about him, that's a
No,
potential obstruction.
No, it's not illegal.
Impeachment isn't entirely a legal thing. It
is a legal thing.
It's high crimes and misdemeanors, which is not very well defined.
High crimes and misdemeanors are not campaign violations. Campaign finance violations happen in every single campaign. The Obama campaign had $2 million in finance violations. The Edwards campaign had $700,000 in finance violations. In the case of these payments to these women, it was a total of about $200,000. So this has not risen to the level of high crimes, and it did not occur during his tenure as president.
It's not up to you.
So it's up to the Constitution, which is what I'm repeating right now. You can't remove somebody from office because you don't like their hair, Rick.
If you have the votes, there are two steps to impeachment.
Yeah, people can vote anything. They can vote anything they want, but they'll be breaking the Constitution.
All right. Well, if you have the votes, you can at least impeach.
Hey,
you may not,
Rick, if you have the votes, you can shoot him. If everyone in the Senate says, hey, Trump's committed treason, the penalty for that is execution. Maybe they can execute him too. He broke a campaign finance law. Let's shoot him. You've got the votes, right, Rick?
No, you don't have the votes.
Well, no, wait a minute. You just told me that if you had the votes, then you could impeach someone, even if it was didn't rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, you can call whatever you want high crimes and misdemeanors.
Then you can say he committed treason and shoot him.
Bill Clinton.
Couldn't you shoot him?
Bill Clinton was impeached for lying about a blowjob.
And notice how it didn't work out?
No, it did. He got impeached.
Right, but he was not removed from office.
Yeah, but there's two parts to impeachment.
I don't care if he's impeached. They're trying to remove him from office in the Senate.
They don't have the votes to do that.
Clinton could not. Yeah, but you're saying that if they can get the votes, they can remove Trump from office.
They could, but they're
on
not.
A campaign finance violation. Is that what you want?
Well,
Is that what you want?
Probably not, but they don't have the votes.
Before the election
What?
or after? Clinton gets the blowjob before, or was
No,
it
it was while he was in office.
Oh.
So, but
Did the campaign violation happen before he?
yes, but his statements about what happened while he was president.
You can lie.
But you can also impeach if you have the votes.
Then you can kill him too. You can
Yes.
say he committed treason and you can have him shot.
Though there has to be a trial.
Okay, but
If the House...
well, no. Why should there be a trial? Because if you've got the votes, you can just say anything, right, Rick?
No, you have to have a trial before you have a vote. I mean, that's how it works.
So campaign finance violation is not a high crime or misdemeanor.
But
It's not a high crime. Treason is a high crime. Murder is a high crime. Following arcane campaign finance laws, you can break one of those very easily. Every single presidential campaign breaks those. And so far, we don't remove people from office because of that. Now, you're saying that if we have the votes, we can and should.
I'm just saying, this is how the process works.
But what do you want, Rick? This is Rick versus Lance, not what these people might do. What do you want, Rick?
I'd like to see him impeached by the House.
And removed from office?
No, but I'd like to see at least a trial in the Senate.
And removed from office?
No, not necessarily.
Well, if it is found that he committed campaign finance violation before he was president, do you think he should be removed from office?
It depends on everything. We're still... Oh, let me bring this up. Hold on. This is the last week in August. Traditionally, you don't want to bring charges against a politician less than 60 days before an election. So the next 10 days are the last 10 days before that 60-day period. This last week, a lot of stuff happened legally to the people around Trump. So this week, this coming week, there could be more charges leveled. It could be a busy week again. And as I've been saying throughout this whole show, we don't know yet exactly what charges will be leveled against the people around Trump.
Did
Wait.
Did Hillary pay for a? Didn't Hillary's campaign pay for a dossier
She
that
paid.
influenced the election? So do you think it's a balanced?
Yeah, but both sides paid for that fucking dossier.
No, that's not true. That dossier was not paid for by the Republicans.
Well, who on the Republican side paid for it? Because it
Nobody
started
did.
off.
Nobody did.
It started off
Nope.
as a Republican.
No.
Well, it started off by certain Republican candidates.
GPS Fusion, right, is an Oppo research firm. It was hired by Republicans during the campaign against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he got the nomination, they stopped because they didn't need Oppo research against their nominee.
Mm-hmm.
Then Clinton came in and
paid for
hired
more
them.
Oppo research.
Not more. The dossier was paid for entirely by Clinton.
So this company.
She colluded with the Russians, and furthermore,
No.
It was the Russians that wrote the dossier.
She hired a Russian expert.
No, she hired Steele, who went to the Kremlin, who got things written. She colluded with the Russians to get their information. The information was written by Russians and given to Steele, and then she didn't report it as a campaign expenditure. So she spent $12 million and did not report it. That's campaign
What was
finance
the
violation.
200,000 that everybody says?
Christopher Steele got $12,000 for that 30-page dossier, which I just read, by the way. And I read it because after the break, I want to give you some news about it.
All right, fine. We're breaking.